All right, good morning to you. So glad to see everybody after most of the week in Vegas. You all look surprisingly good. Hopefully it's gone well for you and you've had a great week here. MMS is always a great time. And appreciate each of you carving out a little bit of your time today to join me in our UEV section this morning. Hopefully you've had a chance to see a number of the things that we've had going on this week as far as MDOP. We've had a number of different presentations, and hopefully this will be another ad to give you some other things to go back and deploy throughout your company. My name is Tim Crabb. I'm a Senior Program Manager at Microsoft, and today we're going to cover Microsoft User Experience Virtualization, or UEV for short, since we have such nice long names for you, and tell you how you can manage that and deploy it across an enterprise. And one of the things that's interesting about this, when I was putting together the content for this session, I wanted to give you the tools that you could go back to your companies and easily get a pilot up and running and start your planning for a full enterprise deployment. So hopefully those are the tools you'll walk out of here today with and can look back at the presentation and get that going in your organizations. Now, for those of you that just came in, earlier we passed out a survey. If you're an MDOP customer and are using one of our MDOP tools, they should, oh, we're all out? Okay, well, never mind. I was trying to get them out. That's great. If you did get one of those surveys, make sure you turn them in either at the end of the session or over at the MDOT booth in the lab. So, okay. All right, let's dive in and walk through and get going through this. Our session objectives today are ideally that you'll know how to enable user state virtualization and that you'll know how to deploy and configure and roll it out in your enterprise. It's pretty simple, straightforward. So the takeaways, obviously, you're going to understand the straightforward deployment options. There's some really cool things we've done with UEV to make this super simple to help you get up and running very quickly. And then also, we want you to be able to leverage your existing tools and infrastructure so you don't have to create something new, that you can go out and get this started very quickly and easily in your enterprise. All right, so let's start by giving you a little bit of background. Change the device and keep the experience. This is based on these three pillars of being personal and flexible, simple and versatile, and integrated and scalable. Now, the first one is all about making this so your users, as they roam between devices, they have the same experience, that they aren't waiting a long time to log in, that the apps just start up and things just happen, that it works the way the user expects it should work. One of the things we've tried to do with this is allow you to be very scoped and very particular in what you want to synchronize and roam between devices. And we give you that capability here, and as we walk through the demo today, you'll see how that works. You can do application settings, you can do OS settings. You don't have to reconfigure the applications. We natively integrate and give you an easy way to pull that in. The next one is making it really simple and versatile. And this is where, using what we call our settings location templates, you can define exactly what you want to pull across. So unlike some of the other virtualization technologies that grab everything and don't give you any choice, UEV is all about being very particular and very specific in what you pull in. And a template allows us to define the files and registry settings that we want to pull in, and then applications just begin to work just like they normally do. Now, we provide a number of templates in the box to make this easy and simple to get up and running, but we also give you the capability to customize and build your own. So if you have applications that we haven't provided, you can go ahead and build your own, even tie in existing line of business or other custom homegrown apps, because we're using standard interfaces to pull this stuff in. And finally, we also give you the ability to roll back to that initial state. And this is kind of interesting, as we take an initial state of an application before we start roaming the settings, so if you ever did have to pull that back, you could. Finally, let's talk about integrated and scalable. And this is all about the pillar of understanding what tools you have in your enterprise and how we can snap in and work with that. That's important because you don't need to create another infrastructure. You guys have already invested in that. That's why you're at conferences like these, to build and take value in what you already have. This is perfect for that because it plugs right in and uses existing tools, ties into Configuration Manager very easily, and is seamlessly integrated across our virtualization products in MDOP. So let's take a look and drill in a little bit more on this. So I like this slide because it gives you kind of a position of some of the virtualization products available from Microsoft. And this isn't the slide where I'm trying to say ours is so much better than everybody else's. I did meet that criteria, though, by giving us more checkboxes, which is always good on one of these slides. But it gives you kind of an idea of what is out there as far as virtualization from Microsoft to help you understand. So if you're using roaming user profiles for Windows 7 or roaming user profiles for Windows 8, you can see how UEV can add some value there. If you're moving to Windows 8 and looking at things like Microsoft Account, you can see some of the differentiators there. And I'm not going to force anything on you, but this is just kind of a positioning slide to help you understand how UEV can fit in and provide some value in your enterprise against some of these other technologies. Now, with that, when should you use UEV? And this is kind of the grand question when we talk about that previous slide and see what those other technologies are. There's really three cases I'm going to make for you. The first one is granular control. It's important that when you're thinking about how to roll these out, you don't want to have users sitting there waiting for a long time for their application to come up, for their login to start, and you've seen that in previous years. We give you the ability to pick specifically what OS settings you want to roam and what application settings you want to roam. This gives you the ultimate control in your enterprise. You can say, you know what, I really only care about these 5 applications or these 10 applications, or I really only care about IE favorites. And you can even adjust that based on a department or division or group level settings as you need. Okay, the next one is mixed desktop environments. This is really a big deal as we look in today's enterprise, as we're seeing many more VDI instances rolled out, remote desktop sessions being made available. You have users using multiple environments at given times. I may have a desktop, I may also have a laptop, I may also, again, have a session for VDI for when I'm working remotely and don't have those tools. And whether that's 1 user or 100 users, you still want to provide a premium experience for that user. What this does for you is it gives you that capability to allow them, whether they're logging in any of those environments, to have a consistent experience, whether it's a traditional or a virtual desktop, because everything is familiar. With those settings, you can give them the same wallpaper, the same layout, the same favorites, the same toolbars, all those things that they are familiar with, and it just happens. It's a great thing. Next one is mixed application environments. And hopefully all of you have taken a look at AppV this week. There's actually a nice session this afternoon talking about moving from AppV 4.6 to 5.0, and there was one yesterday on AppV and Office integration. Encourage you to look at that. With virtual applications, there's some huge flexibility and gains that you have as you look at this. The great thing that we've done in UEV is we allow you to mix those environments. So if I have a traditional application environment where maybe on their desktop I'm rolling out the full MSI install, if I have virtual instances in my RDS sessions or VDI or laptops, those settings will roam just fine. UEV makes that the similar environment as the users go between devices without any extra effort on your part. Just simply automates it, makes it easy. Just what you like to hear. All right, so let's walk in and see how this stuff comes together and give you a good feel for how you can start using UEV. All right, so let me just take a second to get this up, and I'll switch this over. All right, so what I have here, as we're switching, let's try VGA2. There we go, much better. Okay, so here I have 2 environments. I have Client 1 and Client 2. Client 1 is Windows 7, and Client 2 is Windows 8. And I did this on purpose to hopefully give you a little bit of a feel that these are similar environments, and it doesn't matter roaming between these 2 environments, Windows 7 or Windows 8. So over here, I'll just launch a couple apps just to show you how they look. Calculator, pretty basic. If I come over here in this environment, Calculator, again, pretty basic, same kind of thing. So this gives you kind of an idea that the environments are similar, applications are similar, but now we want to start doing some specific things to change and roam. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to work like most users. Most users don't work in 2 desktops simultaneously. And I'm going to come over here to my first desktop, and we'll go ahead and make that the primary. And what I want to do is I'm going to start with OS settings to give you kind of an idea of how this works and starts. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do something that is very distinctive and common in most areas. I'm going to pick my wallpaper. Okay, so I'm going to come in and get a nice desktop background, and we'll come in and we'll grab something that looks like a new casino in Vegas. We'll throw that in there so that's on my desktop. Okay, so now I've got that. Now, what I want to talk to you about is how UEV does what it does. It looks at triggers. Now, a trigger is an event that we can capture to say, settings are static, I can grab those and now replicate those. So in this case of desktop OS settings, the triggers are when I lock or unlock a machine and when I log on or log off. Okay? So in this instance, I'm going to come in and I'm going to go ahead and lock this machine. I'm now roaming, going home, doing whatever I need. And now I'm going to go to my other machine. So now I've transitioned. I'm working wherever I need to at this point. And I'm going to go ahead and log in. Okay? Now, did you see that setting change dynamically in the background? What we did at that point is we came up, we looked at those settings, We were able to bring the desktop up very quickly, and then we were able to dynamically apply that as the desktop came up. Two things to take away on that are, one, the trigger was when I logged on, I checked out for settings, and two, there was no delay to the user. The user was able to get in very quickly, they were able to see the change, and they just have a familiar experience as they work in there. Okay? That's desktop OS settings. Makes it very seamless and simple as you work with this. And that can go to other things like if you're on Windows 7, dragging the taskbar around, putting it on different docking places, themes, all those different things. But for now, we'll just keep it very simple for the demo to show you that. Now let's talk about applications. They're just a little bit different because the trigger points for applications are not at log on and log off, but at when an application starts and when it exits. So we'll take a very simple application. I started by showing you Calculator. Calculator is a very basic application. I've seen Calculator more in the past 2 years while we developed this than you'd care to know. But we'll come in here and I'll change it to something that's very basic, maybe a scientific calculator, and because maybe I'm not having a good week in Vegas, I may need to redo my mortgage. So we'll just put that up there. Okay? So now you've got those things and you can kind of look at this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just close it. Okay? So now what UEV's done is we've been injected in that application, so we've been able to monitor when it started, if I needed to apply settings, and when it exits, we said, let's go check the settings and make sure if there's anything that needs to be changed to change. So remember on this previous machine, we actually showed you that this was a basic version of Calculator, right? Let's go back over, and let's go launch Calculator. Okay, there you go. So now I can quickly, instantly recalculate my mortgage as needed, depending on how my week at Vegas finishes out. So you can see that UEV, again, on app start and app exit, is able to quickly and easily pull in the information it needs and apply those settings. Now, you're thinking, Tim, that's pretty cool. Those are basic applications. Do you have anything a little bit fancier? Well, I don't know if it's too fancy, but I'll show you another thing here that we can do. So remember I said we roam between physical and virtual applications. Okay, so you can take those a number of different ways. I'm going to do just a very basic one here. And on this desktop, this is OneNote. And OneNote in this instance, I'm just playing around with it, and I want to customize it, okay, like most users do. So in here, I'm going to come in, and I'm going to go under my view. I'm going to take off the drawing toolbar. Maybe I'll come in here, and I'll throw in, well, let's throw in another toolbar over here. We'll throw in, take formatting off. So I'm just really simplifying it up. And I can do a bunch of other stuff. I'll just keep it very basic at that point. So now I'll close this out. Okay? Now as I roam to my other environment here, this environment is based on AppV. So on here I've actually rolled out and deployed Office 2007 with AppV. And I'll see if this opens up. If not, you'll just have to believe me. But it was part of the demo to show you, so I have to try to show you. Okay, it's not going to show you. So we'll just accept it on faith that it'll come up. Oh, it came up there. Good for me. Okay, so if I come under here under Virtual Apps, I can see Office 2007 has been deployed. It's ready for use. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and minimize that. Let's go back here. I'll launch OneNote. Okay, so this is a virtual instance of OneNote, and you can see it looks identical to my other one. I've removed the drawing toolbar. I've compressed the other toolbar. Very simple and easy. So whether it's a physical application or a virtual application, those things can roam between very easily as well. And again, the same triggers are there. The applications are able to record and just see it and make that happen. So what happens with all this on the back end, just so you can kind of see how this works as well, is we actually do a local copy of the settings and then also a network copy. We're always reading the network copy to pull down, and we compare it against our local copy to see if it's up to date. So there's a couple things I'm going to introduce you to here. One is the local store, which is going to be under the local app data directory for the user, and I can see all the settings that are stored there. Okay, so as I roll them back and forth, I can see that. And let's take a look here at Calculator, if I can find it. Okay, there it is, at the top, of course. And you'll see that I take two. I have a current state, which is the one that I'm constantly using, and then initial. So when an application is launched for the first time, I create an initial setting and archive that, just hold on to it, and then the current. So I can always roll back to that initial if I want. Then over here on the network, in this instance, I also have my, what we call a settings store, where this is actually out there, and this is a hidden directory. I've not made it hidden, so you can actually see it. That's why it's grayed out, though. And as I go in here, I can see the settings that are being roamed between devices. So let's just be a little crazy here, I'm going to delete calculator just to show you how this works. So when I launch calculator and I make a change, and again, it doesn't push it out unless there's change in settings. So we'll roll back to the standard. I'm now home from Vegas, and I don't need to have all those recalculations. I close that, and you'll see that it immediately copies it out to the network. So then as I roam to the next machine, when it starts up, it's going to go out and look at the network and pull those settings down and update its current initial package. Okay? Or update its current package. Initial it doesn't touch. And that's how the setting roams between devices. Okay? So that gives you a little bit of an idea of the settings store, how it's roaming between the devices, whether it's an application or OS setting. Okay? All right. That's your quick whirlwind tour of UEV. Let's jump back to our slide deck here for a minute. And let's pull through and give a review of what we covered on this. So this is an architecture slide that gives you a bit of an overview in depth of how this works. And I'll talk about more of these components in depth as we go through each of the layers of this, if you will. But over on the left represents our user computer. And on the user computer, I install the UEV agent. UEV agent's very small, very easy to install. I'll give you some deployment methods around that here in a couple minutes. But the UEV agent is monitoring two things on that system. It's looking at the registry and it's looking at the file system. Okay? And what it does is when I install a setting location template for that, and in this instance you see I've represented that by Excel, Outlook, and IE. If it recognizes those settings location template, it goes in and hooks that process. So what it does is, first we're looking for app settings over on the left, and then two, we're actually hooking into the processes for those. And what we're doing is we're just simply watching for settings. And we'll inject settings and do that as we need, and apply those, and then we'll also read those as we go. Now once we capture those settings, again on the various triggers, we're going to roam those out and do a settings package seek to the settings store location. Okay, and that's on your network. So the only requirement that you really have to have for this is the UEV agent, and then you have to have a share on the network. There's no server required. We don't have a UEV server. We just need a place to store the settings. And then the user has to have access from any of their devices to that setting. So if I'm in a global company and I've got sites in Tokyo and Australia and New York, I'm probably going to create setting stores common in those areas because users would have to roam back to across the WAN. You don't want to do that. So you've got to be a little smart in how you roll that out. But we give you ultimate flexibility in UEV to do that, and we'll talk about that as we go through the management piece. The other thing that I'll call out is on 3, you'll notice there that we have a comment where it says settings packages are available offline. One of the default requirements that we require is that offline files be configured. So what that does for you is if users are on a laptop and they go off the network, it lets them actually look like they're syncing settings, but it's all cached locally. Then when they come back on the network, those settings are loaded up. So they always have a very quick experience. We don't have to wait for network timeouts. We just go ahead and get things going and make it work very well for them. The final piece is, obviously, we're going to collect and apply settings, and we do that as the triggers, as we talked about, on login and log off for OS settings and lock and unlock, and then also for app start and app exit for applications. Okay? All right, so let's drill in and talk about deployment. Now you've got background. Now you're all experts in UEV. You can go back and give that elevator pitch across your department, get them excited. Okay, so what would that be? So let's talk about the 4 parts of a deployment methodology that we'll lay out. Number 1, configure a setting storage location. One of the number 1 mistakes, and we'll talk about this, is users will install a UEV and they can't figure out why it doesn't work. Well, you've got to tell it where to store the settings. They install it in a dormant state by default if you don't give it that. We'll talk about that in a minute. Next one, you've got to configure the workstations with UEV. So you're going to do that, and that's making sure it goes to the right location in the settings. We'll give you some examples on that. Next, you're going to select and create templates. Okay, if you're happy with the ones we include in the box and don't want to put any others in, fantastic, wonderful, glad we did that. But chances are you're going to have at least a few applications you're going to want to get. So we're going to talk about how you can create your own, how you can go download others, and actually make this work. Oh, and the last one was deploy and manage settings location templates. So once they're there, how do I continue to maintain those, update, and make sure the right things are there? So let's drill in each of these sections and talk a little bit about these. The first one, obviously, configuring a setting storage location. Now, with this, I said this before, I'll reiterate, UEV doesn't include a server component. Nothing's required to be installed. We're only going to look for a network share. We're actually pretty small. We're only looking for, if you're looking at a kind of a planning metric, we take about 5 meg per user. And again, it's going to vary on how many settings you're storing as far as applications and so forth. If you're using only a few, that'll be small. This is just a quick rule of thumb we threw together. So it's not a very big requirement. Settings inherently are pretty light. So you can get that out there. And you have 2 options to roll this out. One is you can say, you know what, I'm going to use Active Directory home directory. So what that does is that allows you to use the default infrastructure that you may have already rolled out. If in Active Directory you've identified home directories as part of one of the parameters for users, good news, you're already there. The UAV agent will recognize that, and it will start storing settings there. Now, the advantage of that is that solves a lot of things for you because you don't have to deal with rights issues. You don't have to worry about distribution. So if a user's in Hong Kong, I've already dealt with that infrastructure concern of having their home directory close to them, right? So as they go around the company, they're going to already be familiar with those areas. The next part is, though, if you want to centralize and manage this and create a setting share, if you will, you're going to want to do this and do a very specific storage share where it's defined on your network as a place you want to have this. And you're going to put an install parameter or pass it through one of the other management interfaces to tell the UEV agent where to store the settings. Okay? So how does that work? I'm not going to walk through this in great detail because we've got a nice article there on the bottom that you can go look at that. But essentially, you're going to create the share, you're going to grant the permissions, and you're going to grant the important thing is the creator owner is going to get full control. And this gives you the limitation of making sure that Bob doesn't have the rights to Sally's settings. Now, settings aren't inherently a major security risk because most of the time you're not storing in those settings. We're not capturing usernames, passwords, and those kind of things. But you still want to make sure they're only accessing their own thing. So Active Directory, Home Directory typically does that for you, but this one, you need to follow the guidelines to make sure the NTFS permissions are configured correctly, so indeed you only go to the right place. And that's pretty simple to do. Again, I could walk through this in depth, but it's easier to go read this and configure it. But essentially, you're going to create the share, make sure the users have the right rights, and then as the agent comes up, and you'll see this in some of our install parameters, it'll actually go out, create the directory dynamically for the individual, and go out and make that work. Okay? All right, the next one is configuring the agent. And this one's probably the most critical, as I said. People have gotten stuck on this because they just install the agent, they just follow the exe and it installs, but yet they haven't told it where to store the settings. They don't have an active, typically what I see is people go into their lab, they install this, they don't have Active Directory, home directories identified in their lab. They put it on 2 machines, the agent, and they will call support or talk to one of us and say it's not working. Well, it's not working because you haven't told it where to put the settings. Okay? So when you configure the agent, there's a couple things you can do. It can be installed, obviously, very simple and easy, and then configured via command line, group policy, or via config manager. Now, what's interesting about that is one of the things that I really like about this is you can actually put UEV in the golden image and roll that out, and it can be in a totally dormant state. And then you can go and enable that as you need with the right configuration of where to store things and actually light it up on which templates and settings and so forth. That's pretty cool. So you can actually put in the golden image, do a global rollout, and then just enable departments, divisions, whole groups as needed based on your time frame and your schedule. Okay? All right, so what do we check for? We check for AD user home directory, or we're looking for a specific storage settings path. And if we don't have that, the agent's just going to kind of sit there because it won't know what to do. Okay? All right, we're also doing a prereq check for offline files in .NET. Again, this is by default. We always want to do that because if I've got users that are roaming and they're going to be going off the network, it allows us to be able to capture the settings and do that. You will not be able to install unless that's on there. The only other option you have is, and I'll talk about this in one of our installs, if I'm rolling out on a VDI network, what's the chances those VDIs are not going to be on the network? Nil, right? So we do have an option to say I'm always going to be on the network, and you can actually override this install, and I'll give you a parameter for that. And then the last one is important. We do require a reboot in order to capture the OS settings, because in order to apply the settings, we have to monitor shell. And we can't monitor shell unless we reboot, and then we can get in there. That's why on app start and exit we can get in just fine. But you will most likely need to do a reboot. Highly recommend it to do that. Okay, so let's give you some deployment examples. This is the part where you can kind of see exactly what you'd need to do to roll it out. So scenario 1, this is just a standard deployment. I'm going to have it install with the default templates. I'm going to have it just roll out, assuming I've got AD home directory identified. I'm just going to go put it in Config Manager, created a deployment that's going to just be the setup exe and /quiet. So what that'll do is it'll roll out on whatever schedule you have. Users will get it. Agent just installs. Now, again, the important thing here is you have to have an AD home directory or nothing's going to happen. Okay? So the next one is, what if I don't have an AD home directory and I want to do it? You need to pass the parameter in green, the settings storage path. And what that does is that says, this is where I want to phone home to get my settings. I'm going to write them there, I'm going to read them from there, and you'll see that we put the parameter on the end, the %username %, and this gives me the capability to dynamically create the directory for the users. And again, you need to follow the directions we had on that previous slide to make sure that I have the rights indeed to go create that directory, and I'll be limited to my directory. Okay? All right, pretty simple, pretty straightforward, just another parameter tacked on there. All right, VDI deployment. We have a parameter called sync method. By default, the sync method is offline files. That's why we require offline files. Okay? And that's because we're assuming that you may have laptops and you're going to install and you'll need to have that consistency when you're on or off the network. Works great. Very cool way that we can do that. But if I'm in a VDI deployment and I'm always connected to the network, I'm going to use this method to tell it to always look online for the settings. Always look online for the settings. And this will actually remove that dependency to have offline files installed. Okay? But I warn you, don't do it on a laptop. You'll be in bad shape. And yeah. Okay, next one, per user enablement. Remember I said you could roll this in the golden image. Okay? This is actually a pretty cool method. We actually have an option. This came back when we did our beta from customers who are saying, give me a way to roll this out in the golden image and make this super easy. So in this case, we've made it really simple. You just say enable sync equals false. And what that will do is when this rolls out, the users will get the UEV agent, they won't even know it's there, and sync is disabled. It'll just sit there. If you have an AD home directory in this instance, it would just not do anything. I can also put the settings storage path in there, but as long as sync is enabled is false, nothing will happen. Now, these parameters, and I'll show you this in the management section, again, can be pushed via group policy, via configuration manager, and via PowerShell. So if you want to roll these out or if you need to change these, we give you some dynamic methods to easily do this. This is just an example of how I can do it via command line on the agent install to get this up and running fairly quickly. Okay? All right, next step. Select and create settings location templates. Okay, this is such a serious thing, I need to take a drink for this part. Okay, so the settings location templates. Templates describe where the settings are stored. This is basically our map to your enterprise applications to know how to synchronize them. Okay? And remember, we're looking at two things, registry and file locations. And if we have those, again, it makes it really easy to integrate with apps because we're not changing any weird, wacky APIs. We're just going to update those to make sure when that application comes up, it's going to get the right settings. And when it goes down, we're going to capture any changes that it has. Now, what are templates? XML formatted files, very simple, human readable. You can go in and see how they work. We have some various tags. You can see these things here that we do to make them simple and easy to read. And again, we have three kinds available to you today. That sounds a little salesy, sorry. You have a choice of your inbox templates, which we give you. These are by default, we provide these. And I'll give you a list of what those are in a minute. But these are ones that we've created at Microsoft, make it super easy for you to install. All you have to do is install the agent. They're automatically registered and applied. You don't have to do anything. I love that. Again, this is what makes this product such an easy thing to pilot. You guys can literally go back and put this up on 2 machines in a lab in 10 minutes and be able to start showing value. It's pretty cool. So the templates inbox give you that, and they give you that ability to easily see these up and running. Now, the next part is custom. Because as much as we've tried to anticipate every template you're going to need, I'm sure we've missed one. So you can actually go in and create your own. Now it's XML, and I know we all love to edit XML. Not. But you have XML there if you want to go and do it. But we've given you a graphical tool that will automatically create those. And I'm going to show you that in a minute to walk through this. It makes it really easy to go create your custom template, see exactly how it works, and get a feel for how this can work in your enterprise. Okay? And then finally, because you don't necessarily want to be the expert, is there help out there? Absolutely. There's a community that can upload these. So on TechNet Gallery, we've provided a location that you can go out and download the latest templates there as well. And these are templates that are uploaded by people like yourselves that have spent time creating their own custom template. And they say, you know what, this is good enough. I think I'll throw it out there. Let people take a look at it. We encourage you to do that. There's no way that we can anticipate and work out all the applications that you'll need in your enterprise. And so please, as you do this, feel free to share your stuff. Help others as you go along. It's kind of that philanthropic approach to it, right, that you're able to go out and share this information. So let's walk through a little bit of each of these and talk about them. First, what's inbox? What is registered with the agent? Okay, we have a set of applications. You can see those over on the left. Office 2010, and with the announcement yesterday of our Service Pack 1, we just added Office 2007. So depending on where you are in the Office life cycle, we give you some good options there. Browser options, Windows accessories, and then the Windows settings. We give you some flexibility there. So you can tie all these in, get up and running very quickly without having to do anything in your enterprise. Love that. Makes it really simple and easy to get going. All right, next one. How do I create a custom template? This is really cool because it makes it so easy, even a guy like me can knock this out. So what you're going to do is we have a tool called the Microsoft User Experience Generator, User Experience Virtualization Generator. Nice long title for you. It goes out and monitors apps. And so what you'll do, and I'll demonstrate this in a minute, but you'll launch the application, it'll capture the settings, allow you to see those, select, say, generate a template, and you're done. At that point, you're able to take that template, drop it on your machines. You can auto-register that. We'll talk about the methods to do that. Or you can go ahead and register it manually. But it gets it very easy and simple to start rolling these things out. Okay? And we'll walk through that in our demo here in just a second. So what's generated in this XML template? This is your example of the format. Pretty straightforward. Up top, we give you kind of the summary of what the application is that we're working on. Right? This is all, when you're doing a custom template, you'll create this. The next part is actually what we're monitoring. In this instance, the EXE. You can see the major and minimum version. What's interesting about this is Calculator will monitor between Windows 7 and Windows 8. There's multiple versions of Calculator, those two versions. And that's an example of where we do this. This is an example of just using one version. So you can actually span versions if you need, if there's no settings changed. Hard to believe Calculator didn't change a lot from Windows 7 to Windows 8, but anyhow, it's true. Okay, next one is the registry settings. Now, this is a whole setting area where we have these. Now, this is an example of the way Generator typically does this. Generator will create these, and what we call them is recursive in this instance, where it'll take and look at a feature path and basically say, you know, I'm pretty sure that anything under Software Adobe Acrobat Reader 10.0 is going to apply to Acrobat Reader 10.0. So it grabs everything there. So these templates typically are a little bit smaller. If you were to look at our Office templates, we've become very specific, where rather than saying recursive, we've been very exact on the particular registry setting we did. And we did that because we have to support those templates, so we've made very particular on what those settings are. And neither is necessarily better or worse, it just depends on the application. But Generator will typically generate them like this, where it'll say everything under this path. And you'll see the same thing even with the file, that'll say again, oh, I've discovered this key, this file area, same thing. So in this instance, we're looking at app data, everything under there. Okay? So it makes it really easy to see. You can look in a template and very quickly get a good feel for what it's doing and where it's looking for settings. What's nice about this is if there is a particular setting area that you know about in one of your custom applications, great. You can actually put it in, make sure that that gets captured and pulled through. All right. Custom templates. Tim, you've compelled me, you've told me that this sounds great to use generator, but I still want to get into the XML. That can happen, and that's great. But if you do, please validate it against the XSD or actually open up generator. We have a validate option, and I'll show you this in our demo around templates. It's important that we do this because we want to make sure that you're doing the right things. So there's some very specific things that you can do that generator won't do that are above and beyond. And I've listed a few of those. For example, you can do registry and file exclusions, separate architectures. Most applications use the same settings between 32 and 64-bit, but there are some instances where you may have some specific things for those architectures. You can do that. Shell process designation, file registry paths based on known locations. And that's why I said our Office templates are designed that way. Our Office templates, we spent a lot of painstaking time to make sure that they are on exact registry locations and files to make sure they're giving you the best performance you can get. Okay? So again, just the warning, make sure you're doing that, and we'll walk through that in our demo. Okay? So with that, let's go back to our demo. Let's make sure that we're up, and then I'll switch over. Okay, switch. Okay, so we're back on the Windows 8 machine. I'm going to go ahead and launch UEV Generator. You can see our little logo there, icon, and it comes up. Pretty straightforward. You're going to be able to do three things in Generator. We're going to be able to create a settings location template. We can go and edit it. This is really the metadata you're going to edit when you go to edit a template. And then we also have the ability to validate. And that's what I was talking about if you do some things in there with that template. So let's start with something very basic and go create a settings location template. Now the first thing you'll notice, you can come in and browse and go grab any exe or shortcut file that you want to do this. Okay? I'm going to come grab, let's see what I can grab today. Let's grab something fairly basic. I had a problem this morning, so let's see if I can. There. Let's do a very basic with Windows Media Player. Okay, and this can vary per app, whatever you want to run. But we'll go ahead and launch this. Now, the first thing you'll see is it comes up and says, do you want to allow it? We've got UEV running over here, the generator, and then this comes up in the background. Now, the majority of apps, they start up and run, and they go to read settings. We see that. And then when they close, they go to write settings. Most of them, while they're actually running, typically don't do a lot of writing. They're usually keeping it in memory, and then when they exit, that's why our triggers are the way they are. But if you want to make sure a setting's captured, you can come in and go in and tweak that specific setting and try to make sure that you're indeed kicking the tires, making sure it works correctly. So if I want to come in and change, for example, the quality here, I'll change that. Ideally, that setting will be captured at that point. So now when I exit, go ahead and exit. You'll see that the generator will recognize that, and it'll go through and start coming back and say, okay, it's complete. I've created something for you. Go ahead and hit next. So we go there. And now it's come back and it's given me registry and file settings. Okay? And you'll see that I have standard and non-standard. Now, a couple of points. Generator is only going to give you stuff that the user has access to. So we're looking in HKLM, we're looking in user app data, local app data rather, those things. So don't expect that it's going to go all over the place, right? We already exclude a bunch of stuff. If you have a dirty app, typically you won't see it doing those things writing to C:\/ because the user won't typically have rights there. But we also make a judgment to say what is standard and what is non-standard, okay? So if you look over here, one of the non-standard things is SQUIM. SQUIM is actually a customer, it allows us to get customer feedback on what people are setting in different applications. We already know that that's not something I want to roam between devices. So we throw that out. We say it's a non-standard thing, don't worry about it, okay? But in this one, there were really no standard registry settings. And over here in non-standard, okay, you can see I've got some other things that really don't make sense either, okay? This one gives you just a brief idea. I can go in and put the tags in here that I want, go ahead and create, and then I'll go ahead and have the template. Oh, it's trying to get me to load it somewhere. Let's go here. And I'll just go ahead and save it. Okay. So I'll go ahead and say close, and now I've got that template created. Okay. Now I could come back in, and if I edit the template, all this is going to do is really allow me to edit my metadata around it. All right. If I want to really go in and edit a template, and what we'll do is we'll go grab one that has a little more stuff in it. Let's go here under Program Files and under Microsoft User Experience Virtualization. This is the default set of templates that we install. Okay? So if I was in here trying to do some edits, we'll go in and grab, let's go and grab Calculator just for grins. Oh boy. Okay, so we'll copy it to the desktop. And I'll just go ahead and let's go in and look at this one. Okay, there we go. All right, so this is pretty basic. Let's see if I make the font a little bit bigger so you guys can see it better and back. Okay, so you can see this is just very basic in what it does. We can go and show more complex. If you want to look at them, you can. But let's say I came in here and made a change. If I just hacked and whacked and was messing around. Okay, so I'll just do that, and I'll go ahead and hit save. So this is where one of the things you have to do is make sure that it is indeed valid. So this is where we want to come in and validate this. Let's go and browse and select our template on our desktop here, which was Calculator. And what you'll see is it will not validate. Okay? So you want to make sure your XML is well formatted, especially if you're in there hacking and whacking. Otherwise, you'll be wondering, why aren't settings replicating? Why are we having these issues? At the end of the day, you control your own destiny, right? We want you to make sure you're accurate, so we do provide those tools to allow you to do that, to make sure it's right. Okay? So that is creating a settings template. Let's flip back here and cover just a few more things. Okay. So next in our deployment methodology, we want to talk about managing and deploying. So how do I do that with the templates? So the first thing we want to talk about is catalogs. Catalogs are a great way to do this because they provide a central way to store and distribute templates. So a catalog is a common location where the UV agents look. And by default, they'll go out and look once a day, 3:30 in the morning. They'll go out and look for that and try to see if there's any change to that catalog. If there are, they'll download them and apply them. It makes it really easy. It's a scheduled task. If you want to adjust that or change it, you can. But it runs nightly, makes it very simple. And if you're going out and creating custom templates, or if you're pulling down different things from the gallery, you'll want to actually use the catalog as an option. Now, you do have another option that you can register them via PowerShell. So if you want to use a script and push that out via Config Manager and run a PowerShell script on your schedule, that can be done as well. I'll show you some of that in our management here in just a couple minutes. Now, inbox templates, we, again, discourage you from actually customizing those. If you do want to distribute those, I'd recommend using the parameter to not install those locally as part of the agent install, and then you'd put them in the gallery. And you also then have to disable, with the PowerShell command, the agents to make sure that they will allow those changes, those templates. By default, again, we really don't want you modifying those, so there's some hoops you have to jump through if you want to use some of the inbox templates and customize them. So just be aware of that. All right, let's talk management. Okay, so I said there's three ways you can manage this: group policy, configuration packs, and the PowerShell commandlets. So what's really cool about these is they give you the ability to do just about anything you need. The group policy gives some real flexibility because with the group policy, you're able to go through and enable things. So if you're doing a dormant deployment, like we talked about, where I've said, let's not turn sync on, I can go ahead and then use group policy to determine when that lights up. So if I want to do it departmentally, divisionally, whole organization, I can do that. Great way to do it. The other thing that you'll see is I also give you the ability to use the applications in Box, and we'll demo this in a minute, where you can enable and disable those applications by default. So let's say I don't have Office 2007. I don't even want to have those templates really doing anything. I can go through and disable all of those. It's very easy to do in group policy and gives that capability to immediately push that out. And of course, you can see the other options that you have there, settings, storage path, roaming settings, and so forth. Now, a configuration pack for UEV is much the same way. It allows me to take those configuration parameters and use that. So rather than using group policy to push these out, I can push them via policy engine inside of Configuration Manager. And these are the same basic ones. We don't give you the ability for individual application enabling and disabling. You could still do that via script with PowerShell, but we do give you the configuration options for the settings. So again, in a dormant deployment, I could still use ConfigMan to light that up and get those things up and running as required or desired. Okay, the next one, PowerShell and WMI. We have gone whole hog on PowerShell. There's a bunch of PowerShell commands that really make this ultimately flexible. So regardless of what tools you want to use, you can always get back to the basics with PowerShell to really pull this together and deliver a deployment that gives you the control and flexibility that you need. All of the agent behavior and synchronization behavior can all be managed via PowerShell, and even the settings, locations, catalogs, and so forth. So it gives you a really good control and management over how you want to roll this out and make this work in your enterprise. So with that, oh, I thought I was up for my demo. We'll hit this. Order of precedence. I won't spend a lot of time on this. Bottom line on this takeaway is that HKey local user, HKey current user rather, takes precedence. So there's a model here that I just want to lay out on this. So when I install templates, templates are installed on a machine basis. But I can install preferences or configuration on a user basis or a machine basis. So I may set a default on a machine basis, but then if I apply it to a user, the user will always trump that. So just kind of remember that. It doesn't put you in too much of a bind, but you need to kind of be thinking about that. And in some of the PowerShell, you can actually be very specific and say, you know what, I need to apply it only for this user. And I can actually push it for current user only, and that's how you get the precedence set. But just remember that as you kind of think about that. If you've got a multi-user environment, it's important to consider that as you consider how to roll this out. All right, so now we're up to the demo. Okay, let's flip back over. We're going to go into do a little PowerShell. Hold on here just one second. Okay. Okay. So let's walk in and do PowerShell here first. I'll just minimize this guy. And I've tried to make this bigger, so I'm hoping in the back parts of the room you guys can see this. Let's go ahead and, thought I launched PowerShell. There we go. I enjoyed it so much I launched it twice. Perfect. Okay, so in PowerShell now, when you're in PowerShell, you're going to want to go ahead and import the module. Okay, so now that that's in, I'm going to do some basics. I'm going to say, okay, so these are all the commandlets that are available to you inside of UEV. So you have a lot of options. As you look at the names, they're pretty explanatory. Git configuration, templates, export packages, register templates, set configuration, test the template, unregister templates. Literally everything that we try to do in an automated fashion, we give you now the tools to go in and adjust the knobs and turn the wrench and so forth to really make sure that it works the way you want. I can also see things like, let's start with just a basic one here. Let's do Git UEV configuration. And I can see that I have what I have configured on my environment here. So I've got my settings package. You can see I've got a problem on this machine already. Anybody see what the problem is? I don't have a storage path, right? So this is actually a great way to troubleshoot, because what this gives me is an ability to go in and see what the machine sees, what UEV agent is essentially seeing. And I could then go in and say, I need to set my setting storage path, and I could go ahead and add that in. Okay? Let's look at a couple other things, though, while we're here. Let's go ahead and let's look at the templates. So let's go get a UAV template. And what I'm going to do, if I do this just like this, I get this nice long list of templates. Okay, that's not very helpful, is it? I mean, you can scroll and do those things, but I like doing this one. Let's do format dash table. See if I've got my cheat sheet to make sure I get this right. Let's do template version and enabled and template ID, and we'll do auto size. And now you can see I get this nice formatted table. I can see specifically what's out there. So I can see the list of the templates, and you can see here I basically run all my default templates, and I have them listed in here so I can see, are they enabled, are they not enabled? So I can see the template version, I can see if it's enabled or not, and the template ID, which is the name itself. Okay? So this gives me a great interface and a great way to go through and manage each of these. And again, you saw the different commands I have in PowerShell. I can really do a lot in here. And if you build the scripts and combine that with Config Manager to push those out, you can do some really cool things here to give me some really good flexibility in this. Now, the other part I wanted to show you was group policy. Okay, so let's go look at the group policy here. Now, to get the group policy, you do need to go download the m.admx template. We just updated a version of that yesterday. It's available on download.microsoft.com. And what that gives you is the ability to have all the ADMX templates for AppV and for UEV. So once you install that, you actually do get this capability to come in and do all these settings. Now, if you look at these are the settings that I showed you before, so I can go in and change the setting storage path, for example. I could go ahead and enable that, put in the path I want down here, and then go ahead and apply that to however I want to apply that group policy to enforce that. But the real nice thing that I like about group policies is we also give you the ability to go in and take all the applications. So if I wanted to come in here and say that I don't want to have Internet Explorer settings set, I can go ahead and say that is disabled. Apply, and now that would be rolled out, and it would automatically disable it on any of the machines. And you can see we've done that for all of the inbox templates. So I have all of the Office, 2010, 2007, all those things. Okay? So it gives you some good flexibility and options and control in there as well. And again, the DCM gives me the capabilities of all of this, basically this group without the applications. All right? And that is your quick whirlwind tour of management. Okay, let's flip back here. Now, because I ran through a lot of those commands quickly, I wanted to actually include in the deck a slide that you could see some of these basic commands. We have these documented, and they're out there available for you on our site, but I hate piling through a bunch of documentation sometimes when I'm in a presentation, so we try to give you your quick cheat sheet, if you will, to go back and again, this is all about getting you guys up and running to go home and try and test this. So now you've got some commands to go kick the tires and drive around the block, so to speak, to get going on this. Okay? All right. We've come to the end. So our goal of this was hopefully that you understand UEV in a way that you didn't before when you came in. Tried to give you the tools to understand how you can use this to make a straightforward deployment, to easily be able to configure and tweak and get those options that you want, to be able to point it to the right settings store, to be able to create a catalog path, to go through and create any custom templates that you need. Hopefully you've understood that we have a number of different options for management to make this super easy as you roll it out in your environment. I encourage each of you to go, and if you don't have MDOP, work with your sales team to take a look at it and get that opportunity. It's a powerful tool set, not just with UEV, but with the many other tools in it. With that concludes our session. Let's go ahead and just give you a couple reminders here. Love to hear the feedback. If you can please take some time to give us feedback on how the session went. If there were shortcomings or positives, please let us know. That helps us refine the content. And then related sessions, you can go back now and see these others if you want to see it, from MBAM 2.0, which was announced yesterday, to AppV and others. Please take a look at these sessions. There is a AppV session this afternoon I'd strongly encourage you to be at as well. And then finally, obviously this will be available online in recordings. So with that, let's open it up for any questions. Make your way to mics if you can, and we'll do our best to answer them. Thank you.
When you had a look at, sorry mate, over this way, to your left.
Are there any questions?
Hello.
I don't see you, but go ahead and talk.
To your left.
Oh, okay.
When you looked in the XML and you had the registry key defined, you didn't actually specify a hive. Is it just assumed it's current user and local machine? It monitors both?
So the registry key, it'll only look in current user, so if there's no settings for anybody but the current user, you won't get those.
Okay, cool.
So I did just a very basic application, probably too basic, but at least it gave you kind of a feel for what it is. Yep. But depending on the application, you'll see it populate a lot in there. It just depends. So like I said, I was trying to get something really simple for this, so that's just why.
Too easy. Thanks.
Okay, next question.
Yeah, hi. Is the entire user folder on the network, is that downloaded every time the user either locks or unlocks their machine? So if they have a very bloated personalization settings, say it's 10 meg, and if each time that gets synced up completely when they log off or log on, there might be some latency there where they experience a little bit of
we're only uploading and pulling down the settings for the specific application that I'm using or the OS setting. So that's all we grab. We're not grabbing everything.
Not the entire
And
thing.
remember, it only happens when there's a change. So what I do is if I make a change, I'll upload that, and then when I launch that application, I'll go out, grab the stuff from the network, do a quick compare against what I have locally in my current state, and if it's not changed, I'll just go ahead and let the app start. So it's very fast, very granular, and that's one of the key problems we've tried to solve with this is, let's not grab everything if I don't need it. Let's get the user working quickly, whether that's logging in or launching an application.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next question over here.
Are there any limitations on how many templates you can have in the session or the settings template catalog?
Are there any limitations of what you can have in the settings location catalog? No. I mean, once they're in there, what it does is the monitoring of the apps, once they pull that down, we just simply watch for when that app is launched. So there's really no physical limit, and there's really no memory impact until we actually go into that application. So when that application exit, we exit.
So if you don't use the app, say, then you're not going to be impacted by those templates being there?
I didn't hear that. Sorry.
So if you don't use the the application, then you're not impacted by those templates at all?
That's correct.
Okay.
So that's why, like in mine, you saw by default I registered Office 2007, 2010. If I don't have those applications running, it's never going to impact. It's not going to run at all. Okay? So that's why I say to enable them or disable them, it's not as big a deal. Register the apps, and if the app runs, then you'll have it. Okay, any other questions on these? Okay, over here.
You have a new version just came out, you said, and we've been evaluating the product, but we still don't see support for Office 2013. How come?
So Office 2013, because of the settings synchronization native to Office with Office 365, we haven't done anything there. That settings synchronization is provided native in Office, so we have Office 2000 and Office 2010 today. So we encourage you to use their settings sync.
What if you're not going to?
What's that?
What if you're not going to go to 365?
What if you're not going to go to 365? On the gallery, there's some third-party templates that have been uploaded, so you're welcome to use those and do that. Okay, next question.
Do the commandlets that are available support computer name variable for remote management?
Computer name variable for management. On using the PowerShell commandlets? I'm not sure on that one. I'd have to play with it. I think they may. They give you options to pass in for the computer and for the user, and they should support. I mean, there's nothing that we've done specific that would exclude them. I'd have to play with it, though. I haven't tested directly. We can play after if you want to come up. We'll try it. Anyhow. Okay, question?
Is there a way to sort of bulk use the generator in some sort of bulk fashion when you're?
I like the concept,
Yeah.
but no, it's a one-off at a time.
Okay.
So the question becomes, and where I go with this with people is I typically ask them, it sounds like it'd be great to take every application and monitor all the settings for them, but really, what do you care about? And it's interesting because when we've taken this subset of things like Office and OS settings, beyond that, I kind of view it as a pain threshold. If a user were to start over, what causes them the pain? So whether that's starting over by logging into a fresh VDI session, or if I have to rebuild the laptop, and does that mean it's all 1,300 applications that an IT enterprise supports? Probably not. But what is that delta, that subset? I don't know. But that's, give us that feedback over time. If it is that big, then maybe we need to investigate that. But today, right now, it's just one at a time.
Okay, thank you.
Right here, sir.
For the custom templates, say you manage 30 to 40 offices,
Okay.
and you only want to manage the templates in one spot. What's the best way? Just do DFS replication?
Yeah, you could do DFS replication to take those and point each of those sites to their own unique catalog, and then just make sure that whatever you update centrally gets pushed out to those. And that's the best way to do it. I mean, the interesting thing is, and I didn't show the scheduled task, I apologize, but the scheduled task, it's only looking once a day. It's only looking for any changes that are there. So like I said, any basic replication amongst all those sites, you'd be fine. Okay. Question over there.
Yeah, so what happens to user settings? We currently have local profiles. We push this out. What happens to the user settings existing? Do they get reset back to defaults when you push this out, or does their existing settings get pulled into UEV?
So you're using local profiles right now, you're saying?
Yeah, sure. And a user has Word configured the way they like it. We push out UEV to their machine.
We should capture it and should be able to roam it, but what you've got to be careful there is just you don't want to create too many masters, so to speak, right? You want to ultimately decide how you want to manage this. What we found is typically people are in a migration state. They're picking and choosing how long they want to go from one or the other. But in theory, we should be writing the same content is what will happen, right? Are you using local profiles on startup every time they pull it down and write them, or how are you doing it?
No, we just have local profiles. Like, we don't use roaming profiles. We just the user logs in and they get a profile created.
Yeah, this would work great there. Then what would happen is they get their local profile. So I've got two machines. I've got a local profile on machine A that's different from the local profile on machine B. And what we will do is we will manage the settings that you care about based on the templates defined between those two machines. So update settings over here on machine A, we capture them, push them up to our central store. I log into machine B, we pull them down and apply them. So ultimately those local profiles over time for those settings that you've defined will become identical. It'll be eventual consistency. Now, we don't take all of the stuff in the roaming in the local profile, but it's the stuff ideally you care about, like background and folder settings and IE and all that stuff, and the users will eventually have ultimately an identical experience that go between devices.
Okay, so we'll merge. If they have different settings on two different computers, and then will it merge the settings from the two computers into their UEV settings?
What we do is we actually do a last writer wins.
Okay.
So one of the risks you have is ultimately you've got to figure out who's going to be the one that's the master. Because if I log on machine A first, and then I get its settings captured, then I log on machine B, in theory we may overwrite some of those settings. So then what happens, and this is where we get in the eventual consistency model, is the user goes, crap, I wanted these settings, so I make those changes back. Those changes get replicated up, and then they overwrite back here. So eventually you get this eventual consistency, but you've got to be careful if they are using very specific, unique settings on each machine. You may have an upset call at one time or another. And this is where some users really want to be able to have uniqueness on the machines, and maybe they don't want to roam all the settings, and that's where you'd have to use things like PowerShell to disable templates. For example, I may have unique IE favorites on machine A than I do on machine B. So I don't want to roam IE, but maybe I care about Word settings. Cool, I can do that. It just depends on how you want to enable or disable the templates to get the granularity to give you the desired results.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That does. And so you said that we can't, that UEV does roam Internet Explorer favorites then?
Yes.
You don't have to use folder redirection anymore.
Yep. It actually, that's one of the features we worked very hard on, so you can get that.
Okay, very good.
Okay? Let's go back over here.
Are all of the user configuration settings the same, or the same options between both policy and the PowerShell? Is there parity between them?
There's parity in functionality, but not always in naming.
Okay.
I'm not sure how we did that, but we have like one will say like sync files, one will say always sync files. You can tell what they are, but it's the same basic functionality.
So the only difference that you're losing between policy configuration and PowerShell configuration is the enforcement of the user to change those on their own if they wanted to.
Not necessarily. I mean, what you get is, well, PowerShell you can do everything. PowerShell you can go in and do everything, but most users you don't have to worry about that, right?
Sure, because policy is written in a protected zone, right? Unless you're an administrator,
Correct.
you can't modify those. Whereas the PowerShell, based on your registry path that you listed, that's in an area where a user technically has permission to make the changes if they went in there.
Yeah, but you could also push that down to the local machine as well. So if you want to manage all configuration in local machine, I can do that. And I can set those in PowerShell, I can set those in group policy, I could even take a reg file and push it out and we'll inherit it. There's always that capability for the, I'll call them the malicious user that knows more than they should. They could still go in and maybe write some of those things, but just like we were saying over here, maybe they don't care about IA favorites, so they want to disable it. Cool. Put it in current user, and your policy still is consistent, but it will override it and provide that capability.
Yeah, and I can use DCM to monitor that, right?
Yeah.
But I can't push out policy. I can't use policy if I want to do more specific granular, unless I want to manage 30 group policies, right? So
Correct.
That's really nice. I wish you would share that with all of your other team members to make sure that they allow both options, because it's really difficult to do management when you have to use current user policy, because only administrative or system has access. So I can't use config man with a user application. You know, user rights run as the user to make those changes. So,
yeah, I think we give you some good flexibility and options.
Yeah.
So, you know, kick the tires, drive around the block, let me know if there's something that we didn't do right.
Sure, great, thanks.
Okay, other questions? Okay, if not, we'll wander out and be over here if you have further questions. Thanks for your time today. Yeah, I think they got him. They went